Well, I'm Bill Anders.
Hello, I'm Gerald Beck.
I'm Frank Borman.
I'm Nick Engler.
My name is Tanya Markow.
My name is Mike Kai.
Well, I'm Dennis Sanders.
I'm Brian Sanders.
Okay, my name is Norman Ellickson.
My name is Robert Odegaard.
I didn't have my first airplane ride till I was 21 years old. Ultimately fell in love with it and knew that was where I had to be or where I had to go.
Started way back, like most kids, you start building model airplanes.
I started building model airplanes when I was 10 years old in Tucson, Arizona, and it's sort of been a love affair. I guess it's almost a sickness.
I had a sixth grade school teacher, I think, got me started in it. He gave all the boys a model airplane, and I think that's what sparked the interest in the airplane stuff. So then just model airplanes just lead on one, just go on.
Antiquated, surplus, junk. These are the aircraft of the past. Some have not flown in over 75 years. Some even longer. There are those who have dedicated unimaginable amounts of effort, money, and time towards the restoration and care of these airplanes. Who are these people who recover, rebuild, and fly these warbirds and antique planes? We invite you to come and find out. At the turn of the 20th century, there were more than a few groups competing for the honor of first in powered flight. This international technology race had a wide field, including businessmen, government militaries, and established inventors. In the end, it came down to the little guy, actually two, Wilbur and Orville Wright. On December 17, 1903, the Wright's simple yet elegant flyer demonstrated that controlled, powered flight was possible. And it's happening all over again. Here in the Wrights' home of Dayton, Ohio, a workshop has been set up in this historic bookstore, no bigger than the Wrights' original shop. That's where we find Nick Engler. Nick is on a mission like no other.
I'm Nick Engler. I'm director of the Wright Brothers Aeroplane Company. It's a organization of educators, historians, pilots, and aviation enthusiasts. We're conducting an experiment in new archaeology. We're repeating the same experiments that the Wright brothers ran between 1899 and 1905 in their quest to create a practical aircraft. This includes building all the machines of the Wright brothers, as well as their wind tunnel and balances.
Nick's plan is threefold: an online virtual Wright museum, eventually a permanent museum, and actual flying experiments, the way the Wrights did it. Not only is Nick rebuilding the Wright aircraft, but he is restoring the Wrights' methodology 100 years later.
I spend about 14 to 16 hours a day working on this. This is one of these jobs where really you can't wait to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, I'm re-experiencing the birth of aviation. How exciting is that? It just doesn't get any better.
Nick has an impressive workload. Over the span of 5 years, he plans on researching, building, and flying 5 different Wright aircraft, including the celebrated 1903 Flyer. Later on, we'll travel with Nick to Kitty Hawk and rediscover the path of the Wright brothers. Here at NASA's Glenn Research Center, Mike Kai works in one of the most modern, state-of-the-art testing facilities in the country.
We are in the Mach .3 burner rig facility. It's a facility where we test high temperature engine materials in a controlled environment to see their durability and to improve materials development for higher temperatures and more durable materials, more reliable materials.
Multi-laminates, superalloys, ceramic composites. These are the things that make up Mike's work week, working with exotic materials and taking them to their extremes. This is Mike's weekend and his weeknights when the days are long.
We're at Valley City, Ohio. It's a private strip. I'm here because this airport is representative of an airport in the 1930s. It's a grass strip. It's got old Piper Cubs and biplanes, and it reeks back to a era in the 30s. It's basically a time machine of an airport. There's no control tower. There's no jets. It's an easier way to enjoy aviation at its best. It gets right to the pleasure. I fly it's a home-built aircraft. It's called a pietenpol air camper. It's a home-built design from the Depression era, 1930s. This aircraft took me approximately 4.5 years to build, and that includes rebuilding the engine. The engine is 1946 engine. It's been overhauled to a zero-time specification. Gosh, I probably spent 30 hours a week after work evenings and then on weekends working on the aircraft at home. I was single at the time I was building the aircraft. I'm married now. Much more efficient when I had more free time.
This aircraft does attract some attention. Mike has won several awards at different fly-ins. He also garnered the Bronze Lindbergh Trophy in 1998 at the Experimental Aircraft Association's annual fly-in in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Basically, it's a way to turn back the clock. In a fast-paced job where we're working on high-tech materials, this shows the advanced materials in this airplane, what they were in the 30s, and that they're still functional and useful today, and that you can still enjoy them to their fullest in a very fundamental way, very joyful way to fly in something this basic, yet so old in design.
It takes a hardy soul to tough out the winters of North Dakota. Gerry Beck is one of those souls.
Well, I'm here because I'm a native of here, born and raised in North Dakota. You know, although today when we drive up here it's blizzarding and there's snow and it's kind of ugly weather, but it's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. The people are fantastic. We're very self-reliant in our shop. We do just about everything in-house.
After leaving the farm, Gerry went to college and became a teacher. The aviation bug soon followed.
I have a small company in Wahpeton that actually there's about 10 of us that work there, and we do mostly restorations on kind of World War II airplanes by and large.
Gerry entered the business doing crop dusting. During the cold winter months in North Dakota, he maintained his and other pilots' aircraft. Ultimately, his attention crept towards warbirds.
I mean, aviation in itself is very romantic, but then if you take different sections of aviation and you look at it, probably, in my mind, the most romantic section of aviation would be that during World War II.
Aircraft restoration is not a simple business of cleaning and repair. Many times the individual may start a project with next to nothing.
The airplane you see behind me is a P-51 Mustang that started out about 12 years ago on a Saturday afternoon when a gentleman drove into the airport and asked if we worked on Mustangs. And I said, well, certainly we do. And he said, well, I'd like you to build me a Mustang. My next question to him was, well, what do you have? And he says, well, just a minute. And he disappeared and went off to his van and came back a couple minutes later carrying a hydraulic tank and said, here, this is what I have to start with. So part of this came off the bottom of a lake in Uruguay. And anyway, 12 years later, we're in the stages of final assembly. Hopefully the airplane should fly in a couple months.
Although a Mustang rebuild would be daunting enough, Gerry and his staff are close to churning out a rarity among rarities, an authentic, flight-worthy Japanese Zero.
The Zero that we're working on is a project that came out of the Solomon Islands about 35 years ago, and it was being done in Canada. Some gentlemen in Canada put about, I suppose, 12 or 14 years of their life into it, and we acquired it. We're into it about 2 years now. It's standing up on its landing gear. The hydraulics are done. The electrical is done. There's about 4 things that really need to be done, and they all have to kind of happen at the same time. The cowling, the cowl flaps, the exhaust system, and the induction system. And so those are the major things that are left, and hopefully we'll have it flying in a couple months.
Being something of a Mustang specialist, Gerry's crew will soon turn their attention to a new project.
Another interesting project that we're working on is an A-model Mustang. And we had the opportunity to do a C-model Mustang, and that one's done and flying and been out there. But when we had that airplane apart, we took the opportunity to duplicate a lot of the parts in it.
When all is said and done, Gerry will produce 8 A-model Mustangs. Gerry, Beck, and his staff at Tri-State Aviation pride themselves on their work and their self-reliance. A family business that hunkers down during the winters and produces great restored aircraft. He is, however, not alone. Just down the road is another hardy restoration soul.
I live here because I was born here. That's the only reason I'd ever want to live here.
Bob Odegaard. Like Gerry Beck, Bob started in the crop dusting business. Then, after 17 years of having to maintain his own airplanes, as well as others, he gravitated towards the antiques.
Obviously, like most of the kids, I drooled over the Mustang and the Corsair. And one day the teeth got so long, they got so deep in my flesh, I could never get rid of it.
After working on Warbirds for a few years, Bob stumbled upon the project of his and many people's dreams.
And I knew of 57. I knew it floated around the country. I saw it in the back of a shed and, never realized that I'd ever have it.
A Super Corsair.
Say the Super Corsairs were kind of unknown because they were being developed right toward the end of the war and never became operational. They had a lot of power, and the air racers picked them up after the war and were very successful. There weren't very many of them. There's only like 10 production airplanes ever built. And there's only 3 of them left today.
The Super Corsair was just what the name suggests, a souped-up version of the Vought fighter of the Pacific. After the war, air racing was the venue that let the Super Corsair shine. Famed Cleveland air racer Cook Cleland recognized the potential of the Super Corsair and added 3 to his racing team. In the 1949 race, Cleland had 57 raced by Ben McKillen, who gave her the distinctive red and white paint scheme. McKillen did no modifications prior to the race. In the Tinnerman Trophy race, McKillen in '57 came in first place.
The greatest reward, or of course probably the most exciting thing that happened to me, again it was kind of by accident, and that was stumbling across race 57 because of not just being an airplane, it's an airplane that's got some history.
Race 57 was famous. So famous that folks back then didn't just make models of the Super Corsair. They made them of that particular plane. Apollo astronaut Neil Armstrong was one of those folks.
To be able to redo it and fly it, it's a very nice flying airplane. And to take it off to the air shows and have the people come up to you that saw it, or their dad took them to the air races and they were like 12 years old and they think they'd never see the airplane again. Here it shows up one day and they're very surprised, and that's probably the best payback for me, is to see that.
Along with maintaining his Super Corsair, Bob has a full plate of restorations in the works.
I believe I've got about half a dozen airplanes right now. Mustang, couple Corsairs, half a C-47, 414 Bonanza, and another Mustang going together, I guess.
One of those at his shop in the works, a second Super Corsair. On the edge of western Nevada, there's a man who lives at the base of a mountain. His name is Roy Rem.
Probably machinist was the main thing that I was for quite a few years, and then when I moved, and a little bit as a mechanic, but mostly as a machinist. And then when I moved away from home, I got into more machine work, and then I did some carpentry work and worked as a plumber for a while, an electrician, and I was a draftsman for a while. It's a lot of little different things.
Roy has gone through a few careers in life. He finally has found his calling, aircraft restoration.
Just always had an interest and a love in airplanes, and so I figured I'd explore the airplane stuff and see if I could make a living at it. I started building the old airplane wheels, the 30x5 Bendix wheels, and that went pretty good, and then it developed into building these airplanes. And I always wanted to build one for myself, so I had I accumulated a lot of prints and information about the airplanes.
Fate stepped in to help give Roy his chance. In 1993, Hurricane Andrew swept through southern Florida, leaving devastation in its path. This was the remains of a vintage 1930 Boeing Model 100, the last bi-wing fighter Boeing ever built.
And then when I found out that this one was destroyed in Hurricane Andrew, I proceeded to try and get the job of restoring it. Unfortunately, I wound up getting the job to restore that airplane.
The project has grown, however. The Boeing 100 had different versions when it was used by different parties. The Navy's F-4B-1 and the Army's P-12B. When the project is over, Roy will have completed 8 versions of the same aircraft.
Okay. This is the wing room where we're building all the wings for the airplanes. These are the lower wings that are this is the upper wing, I'm sorry, this is the upper wing. And there are 3 more upper wings above here that are finished, and this is the 4th one that's going together. If you're building one airplane, you would do tram lines and strings and everything else to get the wing lined up. But this fixture is all precisionally made, make all the aluminum parts, and then, so when the wing's built in the fixture, it comes out straight. It's perfectly level and everything is right on it. And you can't really buy any of the parts. All the hardware, all this stuff has to be made up. You know, we make it here because you just can't just go buy it. So you have to make everything to build the airplane, to build the wings. You'll notice the window at the end of the room here, that comes out, so the wing goes right out that window. Yeah. Yep.
Although Roy is building one aircraft as a skinless static display, the rest of them will be flyable.
I just feel that the effort that you put into doing something, why not make it be real 100% and work? Do it. It does take more, but with a little more effort, you can make it a flying airplane and make it a real airplane. And the people that are interested in these airplanes want to fly them. They don't want to just look at them.
In its 9th year, the project still has 2 or 3 years to go.
Be some more aircraft. Boeing monomail is a real interest to me. I would like to build 1 or 2 of those, but not really sure. Let's get through this one first, and then I'll get on to some other ones. But there'll be more after this, for sure.
Welcome to the air show circuit. Here in the heat of a Midwest summer, people gather to watch, hear, and smell airplanes. Some planes are of the modern variety. Some are not. It's here we find Gerry Beck and his F4U Corsair.
Well, I think the biggest thing that prompts me to bring an airplane to an air show is the people that can get the enjoyment out of it. Sure, it's a hoot to fly the airplanes, and it's great to work on them. I think the biggest gratification comes from the fans that you have, so to speak, especially the old timers, the guys that flew them during the war. I always tell them, you know, they had to do all the work, we get to have all of the fun.
Air shows like this afford Warbird owners a chance to help one another with their planes. A congregation of knowledge like this doesn't happen every day.
Hasn't run in 24 hours.
Yeah, I was looking for a...
An air show wouldn't be complete, however, without some flying. Even though Gerry is experienced with Corsairs, this show offers him a rare opportunity.
I've been flying this thing for 5 years now, and I think this was the first time I ever had the opportunity to fly with another Corsair. It's always usually flying it in a mismatched formation with something else, whether it be Mustangs or whatever it happens to be. So actually, to get up there and to get with 3 or 4 other Corsairs and be in formation with them, it's not only easier because all of the airplanes are going to respond the same, but I mean, it's just, how do you explain it? I don't know how to explain it. I kind of like to be at home, and but it's all worth it when it's done. And I've been on the road now. We did the Cleveland Air Show last weekend, and rather than go all the way back home, I came down here after the show and spent the week doing some flying for the folks here. And it'll be kind of nice to go back home again and go back to work.
What could a 1940s P-51D Mustang and an F-15 Strike Eagle have in common? Well, not much, except each is a representative from their respective times as a state-of-the-art air superiority fighter. Nothing showcases this better than the heritage flights. The Heritage Flight's mission is simple. Display for the public the aerial pairing of today's and yesteryear's frontline fighters. It's not as easy as it sounds. 3 pilots of the few who have been approved for Heritage formation are Brigadier General Regis Ursler and Apollo 8 astronauts Major General Bill Anders and Colonel Frank Borman. All 3 fly restored P-51D Mustangs. All 3 never flew the Mustang while they served in the Air Force. They chose this antique fighter after retirement.
The P-51 has all the World War II panache. It's got a great history. It's a good flying airplane. And you know what? It just looks sexy.
On the other side, some of America's best military pilots are bestowed the honor of flying Heritage.
Just for a fighter pilot standpoint, it's a lot of fun flying in formation with all these different warbirds. You know, we got P-51s and P-38s and F-86s, all these great warbirds from the past. It's kind of cool just hanging on their wing and seeing that fighter out there, just knowing all the history that they have. On another level, some of these pilots that they have in the Heritage Program, like Colonel Borman and General Anders, it's just a real honor to just look out there and go, wow, I'm flying on Colonel Frank Borman's wing. You know, he went to the moon, and here I am flying with him. So it's a lot of fun doing that too.
Restoring a P-51 to flying condition and keeping it that way is a daunting task in itself.
This airplane was originally in Australia. It was on a gate guard mounted on a pole in Australia. Some people imported it, and I found it in hundreds of pieces in a hangar on a hangar floor in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We bought it, shipped it out here, did some of the work here, and majority of the work in Chino, California, and it's turned out to be a beautiful airplane.
General Urschler's Mustang, titled the Gunfighter, saw action over Europe in 1945. After several post-war years with Air National Guard units, this Mustang was sold on the civilian market in 1956. The Gunfighter now calls Bellevue, Nebraska home, where a crew of volunteers maintains her year-round. Even with this dedicated group of restorers, working for free, the cost of maintenance and fuel approaches $1,600 per flying hour.
Most people at air shows don't understand the enormous expense and preparation that required to restore these things. You have to have a great respect for the people that made them, that designed them and built them, and I think they've turned out works of art.
Flying aircraft in formation that are separated by decades is not an easy task.
The flight it was work. It's a lot harder to fly on that dissimilar kind of airplane.
It can be a little difficult. You know, you go from the F-15 demo, which is high speed, high Mach, high G. You're just drenched in sweat and adrenaline, and then you got to slow it down. Now do a rejoin with a P-51 doing 210 knots. It's a little slippery formation. You know, I'm going about as slow as I can go. He's going about as fast as he can go. So we're real careful with it and make sure it's safe. And the crowd seems to really enjoy it.
With each heritage flight being such a test of their skills, why do them at all?
We need to be reminded, again, reflecting on my father's observation, reminded of our freedom and how precious it is, our most precious possession, in my opinion, and how we must remember that and be prepared for it.
We get the most tremendous response from the American public from the Heritage Flight for some reason. I think it's just a nostalgia of seeing the warbirds of the past and the high-tech fighters of today flying together. It seems to stir something in most people, and they really get a kick out of it.
You know, I have enormous admiration for the people that flew these P-51s in combat. And you stop to think, escorting B-29s from Iwo Jima over to Japan, 9-hour missions and these things. Too many of our young people don't even know what World War II was. And I think it's important that they understand that this freedom that they enjoy, this tremendous freedom that we all enjoy, was paid for with blood. And a lot of the people that paid for it were flying these wonderful machines. So that's why I do it.
With such skilled pilots doing relatively the same act, the question must come up, who's the better pilot?
We're all competitive. Each of us is competitive.
Well, of course, Frank and Reserve, they're the second greatest aviators.
That isn't even a question. Anders ranks considerably behind me, both in piloting skills, knowledge, navigational skills. And, you know, I took him to the moon.
Are we on camera?
Hey, Bill, I'm kidding.
I like to say we're all very highly qualified.
No, I think we're all pretty good pilots, and they're great pilots. I love flying off of Frank's wing. I've done it for years. So any one of them, I'd fly in the weather with them or wherever.
Here's a question. If you enjoyed flying and airplanes, How many would you need?
I mean, presently out of the 21 airplanes we have, 15 of them are flyable.
Welcome to Pheasant Run Airport. The sole owners are Gretchen and Chuck Reed. Throughout the years, the Reeds have built up an impressive collection of aircraft. The property includes 12 buildings, 2 grass runways,
3 dogs and 2 swans, and a lot of wildlife that is semi-tame because we
You gotta quit feeding the
keep it
deer.
that way.
Chuck started flying with the United States Air Force in 1948. Gretchen has flown for over 35 years. She also taught high school English and aviation for 3 decades, including a bid for NASA's Teacher in Space program in 1985. Both have left their careers behind and concentrate now on the other things.
You know, we're at a point now where we just simply enjoy the older airplanes. And part of it is related to preserving them, maintaining them, keep as many of them flying as we can.
The Reed's aircraft range from 1917 through 1959.
My reason for doing so is the simplicity of the components of the instrument panel.
Simple, yes. Easy? Well, perhaps not.
It's one of the worst airplanes you can ever get your hands on. If you think you can fly it, you're a pretty good guy. We got this one, I guess about 18 years ago. It was damaged. We ended up having to build a new top wing. It's a terrible airplane to fly. This airplane will wear you out inside of 20 minutes in the air. I only put it on its back once. Rather expensive batch of repairs. First time I flew this, I said to myself, what in the world am I doing up in the air in something like this? And then it got to be a challenge. If you have a day where you think you need a little bit of extra adrenaline, you roll this one out. Well, we've got 2 that we've been trying to concentrate on. We've got a beach, a twin beach, and we're also working on a 1930 Corbin Baby Ace. Usually, mostly during the winter. It's maintenance during the summer, work on any projects during the winter, when we can put the tractors and the lawnmowers away and we don't get that many visitors over the winter, so we do have a little more time to work on things.
Which brings us back to our question. Why so many?
You answer that.
That's his doing.
Well, you have to have toys. Should I give you the answer that I gave that Wasp gal one day? She asked me how come I had so many airplanes, and I said my wife wouldn't let me have a mistress.
He says airplanes are cheaper and less trouble.
A lot more fun to have one to go play with when you want to, and then work on them when you have to.
Prop clear.
If we had them just to look at them, that wouldn't be any fun.
Ever been to an air show? If so, perhaps you've made your way past the modern displays, down to where they keep the older aircraft. You may see some aircraft that were originally made some 60 years ago. How are they still flying? This is the B-17G Flying Fortress Yankee Lady. Originally built in 1945, Yankee Lady is one of around 10 B-17s still flying today. Found in the Arizona desert, Yankee Lady was in fairly good condition, but not original. After the war, she had been converted into a firefighting bomber. Thus began a near decade-long restoration effort to bring Yankee Lady back to her original glory.
We finished it in 1995, just in time to make Oshkosh. So like I say, we worked on it 9 years, and right now we're probably 98% authentic. We tried to get into the detail stuff after we got it flying, and we're still doing a lot of little things, but we've been flying it now for 7 years in air shows.
Norm Ellickson is the crew chief for this vintage heavy bomber, operated by the Yankee Air Force Museum in Belleville, Michigan. There are over 700 aircraft museums across the country. Many are like Yankee, flying their aircraft to air shows for the public to see, touch, and hear them.
One of the reasons I do it is mainly the old veterans that come out. You hear some amazing stories. Just about every show, including this one, we have B-17 crew members come out, and I've had guys refuse to get in the airplane. Their last memory was getting shot up and jumping out and ending up in a POW camp. I've had members touch it and walk away teary-eyed. And also the young people, which is great. As we know, a lot of young people, I don't know, our schools probably don't teach as much World War II as they should, but there are some pretty educated young people, and they're very interested in it.
After serving over 35 years as an airline mechanic, Norm now has a need to be a part of history.
It's equally as important to preserve the past as it is as the future. And like somebody once said, the history forgotten is history repeated. So that's really the reason we do it. Round engines just sound and smell better than jets.
Reno, Nevada, sometimes described as the biggest little city in the world, home to exciting nightlife venues, majestic nature, and the fastest motorsport on the planet. This is the National Championship Air Races. Held at local Stead Field, the 4-day event attracts more than 200,000 spectators annually. Over 125 racers gather to push themselves and their machines right to the edge. The race course is marked by pylons at different lengths depending on the racing class. Each class of race holds drama, excitement, and danger. No other class brings the crowd to their feet like the Unlimited class. For the Unlimiteds, racers can use any piston-driven aircraft. Even now, in the new millennium, the fastest are still the old Warbirds. Corsairs, Mustangs, Yaks, Sea Furies, Bearcats. These vintage aircraft are heavily modified or raced stock in speeds approaching 500 miles per hour. They were originally designed to escort bombers at 20,000 feet. Now they're flying an 8.5-mile course at an altitude of 50 feet.
There's inherent dangers in everything we do, from driving down the freeway to taking a shower in the morning.
Yeah.
The one thing that
Yeah, I got electrocuted in the shower one time. Figure that one out.
At the farmhouse.
Yeah, at the farm, the gopher.
Long story,
shorted
but
the electrical wiring out to the plumbing. I mean, life is inherently dangerous.
The Sanders brothers have been air racing veterans for many years now.
Well, I'm Dennis Sanders. We have an aircraft restoration business, and we restore airplanes like the one behind us, and we restore them for air shows and air racing.
I'm Brian Sanders, and I'm the quiet, hardworking brother.
Well, our father was into Warbirds in the 60s, and had a P-51 and a T-6, and Brian and I just grew up with it. You know, you got drugged to the airport on Saturdays, so Mom didn't have to take care of you, you know.
And we got to wash the Sea Fury as well.
Oh yeah, you get to wash it, clean it, and you just grow up with it. And
when restoring antique planes, some ask why restoring them to flight worthiness is important. Why not place them safely into a museum?
Well, you know, a static airplane doesn't have much, it has pretty lines, but there's not much character. It's hard to describe to somebody the sound of a Rolls-Royce Merlin or the roar of a 3350. To see an airplane, it's basically coming to life. It's
like animals at the zoo. Why keep live animals? It'd be a lot easier to shoot them and stuff them. You know, and make the same sense. And then people are all upset because you got heads on your wall, but they want you to park your airplane and turn it into a head. No, you got it. It's the emotion, it's the sound, it's the roar, the vibration. You know,
it's basically indescribable. And even if it's on tape, it still doesn't have the same effect as seeing it in person. So I truly hope that this, you know, the flying of the fighter planes continues well into the future.
This year, they are racing a stock British Hawker Sea Fury named Argonaut.
Argonaut is an airplane that we've had for a long time, 34 years, and it was one of two airplanes that my father bought in the late 60s, 1968. This aircraft sat in our junkyard for 20 years nearly. And one day Brian and I were back there and said, hey, that looks like the good start of another airplane, and started cleaning up and putting stuff together, and here about 8 years ago it flew. Took us 2 years once we got serious about it to put it together.
The Unlimited class is broken up into 3 final races: bronze, silver, and the fastest, gold. Argonaut has found herself in the silver race this year.
This year, Dennis is the primary pilot. I'm alternate, so I flew it on Thursday. He flew it Friday. I flew it yesterday, Saturday. And Dennis gets the trophy and all the glory today on Sunday.
That's right, all the trophy.
And Mom gets the money.
That's right.
If Argonaut posts the fastest time without cutting any pylons too close, the Sanders can advance to the gold race, where a bigger purse awaits. The race has a moving start, with race veteran Steve Hinton flying a T-33 jet as a pace plane. When he pulls up and out of the pack, the race is on.
Guys are really good friends. We fly with them all the time. And
we know the airplanes, we know the people.
Yeah, we know how to rile them up if we want to. But no, I mean, the air racing is unlike most other racing. Everybody's really friendly, works together. Somebody breaks something, they come, you know, down here. Hey, you got one of those? Yeah, no, but I'll go make you one. You know, the guys over at Furious made me a fitting yesterday because they had a welder and we didn't. And we needed a fitting welded up, so it's unlike any other racing. The guys are very helpful. And
when the checkered flag comes out, Argonaut comes in second with an average speed of over 380 miles per hour.
We may not be good, but we're consistent.
Consistent. That's right.
Be fast.
Yeah. And if you can't be fast, be really fast.
It is autumn at North Carolina's Outer Banks. Most visitors have gone for the season. Most, but not all. Nick Engler and his crew have set up shop here to repeat an event 100 years later to the day.
We're in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, actually just a few miles south of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, at Jockey's Ridge State Park. This is the only remaining sand dune on the island. Everything else is overgrown with vacation cottages and Kmarts.
Nick and his fellow aviators are here to fly his authentic 1902 Wright Glider. It was, in fact, the 1902 Glider, not the celebrated 1903 Flyer, that many considered the breakthrough in aviation. It was the 02 Glider that demonstrated for the first time a good control of the pitch, yaw, and roll of an aircraft. For this experiment, Nick has enlisted the help of America's military elite. Pilots from the Navy, Air Force, and Army have come to lend their expertise and experience. Captain Tanya Markow is an Apache helicopter pilot with the U.S. Army. Like her fellow Wright pilots, her day job is to fly state-of-the-art aircraft.
I'm here to be a Wright Glider pilot, but also to be a bit of an ambassador for the program. A lot of it is reminding people about the origins of flight. The further you get away from 1903, people do start to forget that these people made it all happen. They get on that 727 and they take it for granted. We're reminding people this is where it all started. And the really nifty part is we're doing it a lot like the Wright brothers did it. I'm not just interested in the Wright brothers recently. I actually told my husband several times now that we're back in North Carolina, I wanted to come watch the Centennial of Flight activities, but I never dreamed in a million years that I would be invited to portray one of the Wright brothers and to do this type of testing and to actually fly any of the aircraft. To me, this is the highest honor an aviator can receive.
Since the 02 is a glider, having just the right wind is a requirement. With hardly a breath of wind to speak of, there would be no flying today. After waiting 8 hours, the historians, restorers, aviators, and media would have to try again tomorrow. The dawn brings bright sunshine and gusting winds. Not enough wind, and the glider won't lift off. Too much wind, and it will become uncontrollable. Today, the restorers will give it a try. After a few tries, it becomes clear that more refinements must be made.
We're actually one shot.
The Wright brothers used similar trial and error methods a century ago.
It is definitely hard. It's not an easy thing to do. We learned a lot today, and we would experiment, and we were being honest-to-God test pilots, and that is totally different than anything I've ever done.
Methods are debated. The machine is adjusted. More flights are attempted. Then, success. By the end of the trip, many more flights were successfully flown. The farthest, over 300 feet. The Wright's best, though, was over twice that. That's not what this was all about, though.
Knowledge is a wonderful thing for its own sake. And we're trying to trace that evolution of genius that gave the world its wings.
People like Nick make this opportunity available. This gets people interested. Stuff hanging in museums, well, that's nice and it's important. It's just not the same as seeing it, as watching it do it. I mean, we're out here flying these things on the very dunes where the Wright brothers made their first flights. So it's real, and that's a big difference.
After 100 years of flight, we are still compelled to look over our shoulder, back to the pioneers. Today's aircraft are larger, safer, and faster than anything that was imagined in the past. There are those today, however, who have interests in something else. Whether they are attracted to the engineering, the history, or the sleek lines, these restorers, and hundreds like them, have what some might call a sickness. Others, dedication. They are committed to recovering, restoring, and maintaining these antiques from aviation. They are committed to giving history a future.